This morning's scripture reading is three different parts, and you'll see the scripture references on the screen. I'm going to read the first two together, and then there's a third one. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and do not forget all his benefits, who forgives all your iniquity, who heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from the pit, who crowns you with steadfast love and mercy, who satisfies you with good as long as you live, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. Bless the Lord, you, his angels, you mighty ones who do his bidding, obedient to his spoken word. Bless the Lord, all his hosts, his ministers that do his will. Bless the Lord, all his works, in all the places of his dominion. Bless the Lord, O my soul. In you, Lord, I seek refuge. Do not let me ever be put to shame. In your righteousness deliver me. Incline your ear to me. Rescue me speedily. Be a rock of refuge for me, a strong fortress to save me. You are indeed my rock and my fortress. For your name's sake, lead me and guide me. Take me out of the net that is hidden from me. You are my refuge. Into your hand I commit my spirit. You have redeemed me, O Lord, faithful God. You hate those who pay regard to worthless idols, but I trust in the Lord. I will exalt and rejoice in your steadfast love, because you have seen my affliction. You have taken heed of my adversities, and have not delivered me into the hand of the enemy. You have set my feet in a broad place.
So let us pray together. Bless this day. Bless my steps. Bless my words. May I breathe in spirit, breathe in strength, breathe in wisdom. Amen. Well, this is the third in our sermon series as we look at Celtic spirituality. We called this series Living the Blessing Way because of the Celtic style of prayers that use the word bless throughout them. When we ask God to bless something, we're asking God to make it sacred or holy. We talked about blessing prayers for the rhythms of our lives, praying at specific times of day, at our waking, at our meal times, at sunrise and sunset, in the morning, the afternoon and the evening, and then for the rhythms of the year in the 4 seasons. Last week, we looked at pausing in awe to see the events around us that we normally miss and take for granted. And we used the strange to our ears prayer, bless to me, to intentionally invite God to come into those times and to acknowledge that every moment is a holy moment. We also thought about the very special moments that mark our rites of passage in our lives: births, marriages, deaths, graduations, moving house, and how they're sacred thresholds into new and uncharted territory that we can ask God to bless. So today we're turning our thoughts to blessings for others, for the world, and for those in the world who are hurting. Prayers just not for ourselves, but for others too, for the earth and for the whole of creation. So you're probably familiar with the Celtic blessing from Ireland that shows concern for the well-being of others, that goes like this: May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. The rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Celtic spirituality has a strong sense of the goodness of creation, in which the life of God can be glimpsed everywhere, Heaven and earth are inseparably intertwined. God's Spirit is present in the whole of creation, in the animals and in the plants. It's a spirituality that's intensely aware of the earth, the sky, the sea. The image of God is to be seen in every newborn child, and people are essentially good. God is at the very heart of life. Redemption is a setting free, a releasing of what we're created to be. All created things carry within them the grace and goodness of God, and we can listen to the heartbeat of God within all things, ourselves, one another, and the whole of creation. So we tend to associate Celtic spirituality with Ireland and the Highlands of Scotland, but there were also Celts in the Isle of Man, in Wales, in Cornwall, and over in France, in Brittany. Last summer, I vacationed in Scotland and visited the island of Iona, where St. Columba founded a monastery in 563. It's a remote island. It took us quite a while to get there. In those days, though, it would have been on the ocean highway between Scotland and Ireland and the many other islands all around the coast up there. Nothing remains of the monastery from that time, but a Benedictine monastery and abbey from the 1200s has been restored, and it stands there today. You can see on the left is the monastery, and on the right is the abbey. And on the right-hand side, down there, behind the bit that you can see, there's a side view, is a door. And out, as you look out through that door, there is the view, and that's the picture we've got on the front of our bulletin today. Look at the beauty of creation that's outside of those walls of the church building. Celtic spirituality, as it merges heaven and earth, is concerned with the whole of creation, about what's inside the church and what is outside the church too. The spiritual is within and without. So I'm going to talk about some history of Celtic spirituality today. There's two 4th century men that had quite an impact. One was Pelagius, who defined what it is, and one was Augustine, who defined what it is not. Christianity came to Britain probably in the 3rd century with the Roman army. Pelagius was a Welshman and a Christian. And early in the 380s, Pelagius went to Rome, and he was well accepted there as a teacher, a writer, and a spiritual guide. He had quite a following. His writings were well circulated, and he had a strong sense of the goodness of creation in which the life of God can be glimpsed. God's Spirit he saw as being present in all creatures and plants. Love for your neighbour means loving all life forms. Christ is the perfect exemplar of wisdom and humility. He said the image of God can be seen in a newborn child, but goodness can be obscured by wrongdoing and evil. He said restraining from wrong deeds is only of relative value if we don't do the good deeds as well. He said a person who is rich and refuses to feed the hungry may cause far more deaths than the cruelest murderer. Redemption is a releasing of what we're created to be. He even taught women to read scripture. And he said the light of God is in us and the darkness cannot overcome it, which is the idea from the gospel and teachings of the Apostle John. And then there was Augustine, from the Roman world and school of thought, and he stood in stark contrast to Pelagius. Augustine was Bishop of Hippo in North Africa. He was a theologian, a philosopher, and a writer, and he was viewed as one of the most important church fathers in Western Christianity. He believed that there is evil in humanity, and people are essentially unrighteous. Humans are born depraved, and humanity's original sinful nature has been passed down from Adam to the present through each generation. Babies lack the image of God until it's restored to them at baptism. His views were based more on the teaching of the Apostle Peter. Peter was the rock on which the church was founded. Salvation is available through Christ and in the church. He's conceived the church as the heavenly city or kingdom ruled by love, which is eventually going to triumph over all earthly empires, which are self-indulgent and ruled by pride. And so heaven and earth, the church is like heaven, and we're trying to bring the church into the rest of the world. So with these opposing views circulating, eventually there were attempts to condemn Pelagius as a heretic. So in the year 415 there were two failed attempts. In 416, Augustine and the African popes condemned him in a diocesan council. But in 417, the Pope backed up Pelagius in a letter that said, "Love peace, prize love, strive after harmony." And that frustrated the Africans. And in 418, they took it out to the state route, the legal route, and there was an imperial edict that banished Pelagius from Rome for disturbing the peace. And then he was excommunicated. The reasons why are not entirely clear. So Pelagius returned to Wales, but his influence on the spirituality of the British has survived the centuries. In 430, St. Patrick began his mission to Ireland. And we'll talk more about him next week. Around the same time, Rome was invaded by the Visigoths, and there was the collapse of the Roman Empire. The Roman army started to withdraw from Britain, and Celtic spirituality flourished for the next 200 years, particularly in the north of Britain. In 563, as we said earlier, St. Columba came to Iona. In 597, the Roman Church started to be re-established in the south of Britain, and as the more the missions from the north and the south came into contact with each other, the more tensions grew. And in 664, a synod was convened in a monastery in Whitby, where the authority of St. John the Apostle and St. Paul the Apostle was argued. King Oswig decided in favour of the Roman mission. And so gradually, the Roman Catholic but Benedictine monasticism took root in the country, and the Celtic stream of spirituality became less influential. The last independent abbot of Iona died in 860, and it took a few centuries before a Benedictine monastery and abbey were built there. But Celtic spirituality never died out in Britain. Their prayers were passed down orally from generation to generation. Many of them were collected together in the late 1800s. And here's one of them. Peace between neighbours. Peace between kindred. Peace between lovers in the love of the source of life. Peace between person and person. Peace between husband and wife. Peace between woman and children. The peace of Christ above all peace. Bless, O Christ, my face. Let my face bless everything. Bless, O Christ, my eye. Let my eye bless all it sees. And then early in the 1900s came George MacLeod. And he was from a Scottish clan that had served the church for over 500 years. And he served as an officer in World War I, and was involved in heavy fighting on the Western Front. And his bravery won him the Military Cross. But he was so shaken by the fighting that he had seen that on his return he turned to drinking and smoking cigarettes. After a conversion experience, he gave those up, and he trained for the ministry as a Presbyterian minister. He was appointed to a couple of great appointments and churches. But as he did so, he became more and more aware of the gap between rich and poor. And so he surprised the people in the church there by accepting a call to a church in a poor shipbuilding area in Glasgow. And as he moved into the places of struggling and struggle and suffering, he found himself going towards a more mystical spirituality. not to turn away from the affairs of the world, but to find God at the very heart of life, to liberate God's goodness within us and our relationships. The Celtic way of blessing doesn't deny sorrow, it moves us through it. So in 1938, he made the decision to rebuild the ancient abbey on Iona and rediscover the Celtic spirituality that had been lost in time. The Iona community was formed. He brought together craftsmen from his parish and trainee ministers. It was an initiative that served to prepare young ministers for the rigours of working in deprived inner city areas. It took several decades to do the rebuilding, and in that time, many inner city young men learnt the craft of stonemasonry and were able to go on and make a living from it. Since that time, the Iona community has become an ecumenical Christian community, working for peace and for social justice. They lead morning and evening services on the island. There's a mainline base in Glasgow. They have many publications featuring their prayers and liturgy, and they fight for social justice. Here's one of their prayers. And the call to worship as we opened our service this morning is a affirmation of faith that they use every morning in their worship. This one goes, "May those without shelter be under your guarding this day, O Christ. May the wandering find places of welcome. O Son of the tear, of the wounds, of the piercings, may your cross this day be shielding them." Just as Pelagius espoused all those years prior about our actions being the most important thing and looking to model our lives after Jesus, many of the prayers are about help for others in struggling times. A blessing for another doesn't deny the sorrow of it, but it has us looking for God's presence within it and a way to move through it. So United Methodist pastor Beth Richardson, whose book inspired this series, has got many prayers in there. I just want to share two with you this morning. A blessing for the long nights. God's peace to you in the twilight, in the long winter night. God's comfort to you in the sadness, in the mournful places of your soul. God's courage to you in your weakness, facing turmoil, facing trial. God's love to you in your pain, in the sadness of the small one who weeps inside of you. God's presence to you in your loneliness, in the dark, empty corners of your heart. God's peace, God's comfort, God's love, God's blessing be yours. And this one for one who is hurting. God, your peace, your comfort, your healing presence. Send them into the places of deep sadness, the wounds, the disappointments, the tears and aching hearts. Touch the tear-lined cheeks with your kiss of peace. Hold your child close, child full of sorrow. Hold your child close, child all alone. Bring comfort and healing, balm for broken hearts, freedom from fear and courage to face forward. You are the miracle worker, the great healer, the mender of the breach. Come now. Come quickly. Come. Both Pelagius and Augustine's way of seeing were rooted in the gospel. How sad it was that room was not made for both ways of seeing, both when they were both alive in Rome and at the synod of Whitby later. There is strength in the tradition of the Apostle John, as we see God in the whole of life and see life as completely interrelated, and how the light of God can be glimpsed even in those of another or no tradition. There's danger in there too of a faith that's not connected to the church and the wisdom that it holds, and how it can become individualistic and not communal. And there's strength in the tradition of the Apostle Peter, the four walls of the church stand as a rock, as we read in the Psalms, a place of shelter, especially in midst of storms. But there's a danger in fearing creation as a godless place, cut off from the world and its troubles. These two ways of seeing are stronger together. I love the way that George MacLeod realised that his faith could go deeper by not ignoring the world, but by finding God at the very heart of life. That Celtic spirituality led him to a social justice ministry. I love that at Iona, which started as a Celtic monastery, it became a Benedictine or a Roman Catholic monastery, and it was restored by a Protestant group. And that now there's an ecumenical faith community there, praying daily and striving for justice. May we too find our lives are enriched by appreciating the way of blessing, by looking for the goodness in creation, by taking care of the world and those who are struggling. Thanks be to God. Amen. And let's pray this litany together. Your hearts in white. If you feel that you can speak this. I am the earth, the air and the waters. We have no voice. I will speak for you. I am the redwood, the polar bear and the great blue whale. We have no voice. I will speak for you. I am the poor, the homeless and the orphan. I will speak for you. I am the very young, the very old and the disenfranchised. I will speak for you. I am a minority because of my size, shape or colour, the language I speak, my sexual orientation or physical ability. I will speak for you. I am alone. You are not. Take my hand. We help each other out of common humanity. We help each other in the hope others will help us when we become weak or frail. We help each other out of respect for the divine spark that burns within